to me, it seems like this is a big thing, right? I mean, without all this money going to USAID to support the U.S. hegemonic agenda, then it's the U.S. hegemony
Yeah.
is dead, in
No,
my
I agree.
opinion.
Right. Yeah, I guess, just talking about the informational effect, just the knowledge that this has been going on, that's okay, just affecting the perceptions. That's, I think that's part of this incremental process. But you're right, if these funds are cut off long term and they're not restored, I'm sure that the Democrats are going to fight hard to restore the flow of funds to USAID, and maybe they will succeed. It's too early to say, but right now it's, looking like it just may never happen. Yeah, that is going to have a huge impact. That this is, again, we've spoken many times about the importance of the narrative. And that's what these different organizations were involved in. It was narrative construction. It was obviously not just doing honest investigative reporting. Otherwise, why would USAID be funding them?
Right.
It's clear there were certain kinds of organizations. They were funded because they were pushing certain agendas. In other words, they were supporting and extending the narrative. And, that's the machinery of the narrative. And a lot of that machinery breaks down, you have fundamentally weakened the narrative. It's just, it's not like it's going to stop, but it's, especially in these smaller countries, it's going to make a big difference. We're talking about, often maybe $300,000 for that organization. In the U.S., that wouldn't really mean a whole lot. But in a place like,
Africa, for
Bulgaria or
example.
Georgia or, yeah, it goes a long ways. I mean, we're
Right.
talking about a lot of money. A place where, again, most people are making like a couple bucks an hour or something like that. That adds up to a lot of paid foot soldiers for Western hegemony. And we are hearing now, hey, we're not getting paid. And a lot of those people are just going to drift away. You wonder how much of the support for the EU and for NATO and so on was sincere, and how much of it was just sort of mercenary. If a lot of these people aren't paid, they may just say, well, I don't believe in this anymore. They realize that they believed in it because it was good for them personally to believe in it. And, we may see a dramatic impact from this.
Right. Well, I mean, even if they turn the funding back on, let's say, the Democrats come back into power after 4 years, and then they try to bring it all back. I don't think they can turn it back on, right? Because it's been exposed. It's just like, the Wizard of Oz. They pulled
Yeah,
the
right.
curtain
The
back.
man
We
behind
saw
the
the
curtain.
guy,
Right.
right, the man behind the curtain pulling all the levers. It's
Right.
nobody knows it. And if you're working for those agencies and you've been exposed, you don't want to be the guy going back there. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
now you're working for this, as a lackey of the
Yeah.
U.S. government,
Right. Right. Well, I think
against the interests of your own country.
right. I think the whole purpose of all this, the way that these color revolutions are carried out, and the way the narrative is shaped, it really depends on this appearance of sort of grassroots organic organizations, right? It's something that's natural. It's just happening. The people are saying this, right? This is just the truth that's just emerging. And then when you show the machinery and people say, wait a second, there's a big so-called, propaganda machine behind this and it's cranking this out. I thought that this was, I just kind of took it for granted, but now I understand what's happening. It's obviously propaganda directed at me. It's surely a lot of people are going to wake up and see that. And you're right, even if it does start up again, it's just not going to it's not going to have the same power. It's not going to have nearly the same effect that it did at one time. I think that's, it's also, we have to say, it's part of a larger trend that, like, a lot of these Eastern European countries, when color revolutions first happened, they were just, the elected governments didn't know what was going on, and they were overwhelmed by them. That happened with the Rose Revolution in Georgia, for example, and what was it, 2002, 2003. But then Georgia, over time, the people in charge, the people that rose into power and into government offices, just they began to understand. They began to see through. They knew what was going on. So when this most recent color revolution was attempted in Georgia, they were ready, and they held their ground, and they knew exactly what they were up against, and they won. At least they won the most recent battle. But this is just part of that trend, and I think with the next battle, the forces of, let's say, sovereignty, as opposed to Western hegemony, are going to be all the more powerful. They're going to be able to stand the ground with even more assurance. They can say, "Hey, people, you know what's going on. Okay, this is not a real grassroots revolution. We know what's going on. It's just the puppet master is pulling the strings. You've seen the strings now, so let's not fall for this."
Right. Do other countries do this? I mean, that could be an argument that the U.S. would make. It's like, well, we have to do this to combat the narrative that maybe the Chinese or the Russians are
Right.
doing this a similar type of thing.
Yeah,
Is there any evidence of that?
The thing is, they really can't come up with any examples. The accusations are, there's some shady internet organization that's pushing buttons, on the internet somehow, and it's all, when you actually look at it, it tends to disappear or turn into, something entirely trivial. Like we had that accusation, for example, in the Romanian election. That was a justification for actually annulling the election, right? The election results. But when a proper investigation was carried out, what turned out, it wasn't the Russians that were involved in some sort of internet campaign. Even if they were, I don't know, think it would be that big a deal. But it wasn't. It was actually a Romanian group that was trying to play with, thought that they were being too clever at playing 3D chess, and the whole thing backfired on them. I guess you could argue it worked for them because they created the suspicion about the Russians. But, that's what we see. We have the only accusations that we really have are about internet shenanigans, and they just never seem to hold up to scrutiny. Like in the case of Georgia, it was stated again and again that, the Russians are behind this, they're doing this, but nobody could actually point to any flesh and blood Russian that was involved. It was even on the ground. I mean, all the protests, what a third of the people that were arrested were actually from Europe, from Western Europe, and I guess Eastern Europe too. But yeah, there's absolutely no evidence that the Russians or the Chinese are doing. If they did, that it would be major news and it would be probably greatly blown out of proportion, but they don't find anything. They just don't.
Right.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the conversation so far. I promise to only take 1 minute of your time. If you're using AI, please consider checking out my website, Novlisky.io. Right now, we're in the middle of this AI arms race. Nobody knows what's the best AI to use. Yesterday was OpenAI, and everybody's talking about DeepSeek. This is great for us as consumers of AI, but what's not so great is having to jump from platform to platform. You don't want to have to sign up for a monthly subscription on OpenAI and then move over to Anthropic and then move over to DeepSeek. So what we built here at Novlisky is an AI hub. It allows you to access hundreds of AI models. We update them as soon as a new model comes out. It is integrated into our system, and you can use them all under one platform. And another thing that's so great about this website is that you can easily use multiple models at the same time to compare which is best for whatever use case. So for example, I'm going to use Anthropic and GPT-4 at the same time. So I get side-by-side results. I use this in my work every single day. I think you'll find it incredibly useful. There's tons of customizations. We have an iOS and Android native app as well. So you have seamless synchronization across all devices. So please check it out. I think it's something you'll find incredibly useful. There are no subscription fees, no rate limits. I guarantee you it's going to save you money, and it's just going to keep you on top of all AI releases.
So this is really a unique tool of the U.S. government
Right.
of funding for news agencies to control the narrative around the world, that they've been doing this. And just the double standard, because like you said, if it came out that Russia was doing this, that somehow Russia was funding some type of, anti-American, pro-Russian news agency in the United States or Canada or whatever, it would be, we would go crazy about it. But it just, like when you take the example of Romania, how these accusations of Russian meddling, and then now we just know that the U.S. has been meddling in every single country. There's a stronger accusation of U.S. in election interference in basically every single country than you can point to Russia or China ever doing anywhere, right?
Right,
Is that
right.
that fair to say?
I think it is. I mean, like if you were just consuming mainstream news here, you would have the sense that the Russians and the Chinese and Iranians are always meddling. It always goes down to these really, I would say, very dubious stories of, again, internet-based meddling, and you can never actually, find a real Russian or Chinese or behind it. But they say, well, we think that this, okay, or this organization, this anti-disinformation organization, has given this list of all these different websites that are actually working for the Russians. And then if you actually start going down the list, you'll find that a lot of them are just independent websites that are doing independent research, and they're reporting things that happen to be in line with what the Russian government says. But if but that's not, that doesn't make them some sort of a mouthpiece of the Russian government. If you come to an independent conclusion, and if that's reality, that's reality. And so, yeah, you would get the sense again, if you're not paying attention, like, oh, the Russians and the Chinese are doing, like every election, cycle, we have that. There's something that's released by the FBI or whatever. We believe there's Russian meddling. You just, whenever you hold up a magnifying glass to it, there's nothing. There's nothing. And you don't find anything like this. Nobody's claiming that Politico or The Hill or the New York Times or well, any newspaper in the U.S. is actually secretly funded by the Russians and doing the Russians' bidding. It just doesn't. There was that hysteria about RT, a few months ago, and there was some claim that one, somebody with a YouTube channel, I can't remember her name, but that she was getting funds from like through RT or something, but she wasn't even particularly pro-Russian or anything. But the thing is, like, we just don't even hear about that. Occasionally they'll make these charges, but they don't follow up with them. It just, I think that the charges are just used as a political tool to shut down certain organizations that are countering the narrative. And even if you could show that one or two, I think that's people were being funded by the Russians. I don't believe it, but let's say that it is. It's still two against hundreds, actually thousands, hundreds of organizations that are being funded by the U.S. government. And this is just through USAID. There's got to be other other funding sources too. So it's probably even more. We may just be looking at a part of it.
Right. This is just the tip of the iceberg.